It's the first time in, 5 years since we head back to the host of preseason testing at a time different to immediately after preseason testing. Let's get ready for the Bahrain Grand Prix and let's talk about the runners, riders, movers and shakers ahead of the race in Sakir. And we'll start off with the dates and times for the duel in the desert. I'm going to start off with local time, FP1 on Friday at 2:30pm, FP2 at 6pm. Then on the Saturday, FP3 at 3:30pm before qualifying at 7pm local time. The race will be at 6pm local time on the 13th of April. In terms of Greenwich Mean Time or UTC, that will be 11:30 for FP1 on the Friday and 3pm for FP2 before 12:30 for FP3 on the Saturday and 4pm for qualifying, with the race at 3pm UTC. And for anybody who is observing British summertime like myself, that means that FP1, 12:30 on Friday, FP2 at 4pm, FP3 at 1:30pm on Saturday, qualifying at 5pm, before the race starts at 4pm British summertime, and should be done by, 7 o'clock if we have to push it all the way to the limits. But it's going to be a weekend full of action from the support series as well. We have the Carrera Cups there, as we have done for the past couple of rounds. But in addition to that, we'll see Formula 3 and Formula 2 return for their first time since the season opening Australian Grand Prix. We'll end up with 2 races for both, a sprint and a feature, whilst the Carrera Cup itself also has 2 races. It's going to vary in terms of the times of the day though. So for example, the F3 sprint race ends up happening in the middle of the day on the Saturday, with F2 sprint happening in the evening just before F1 qualifying. Then the features happen right in the middle of the day for both of them on the Sunday. And that's where the forecast will come to factor in. Now, it's not going to be particularly pronounced for F1. When it comes to the race, for example, I believe when the race is scheduled to start, it'll be about 31 degrees. It'll be the hottest weekend of the season so far, but it's by no means going to be the most draining of it because the duel in the desert happens at sundown. But the highest temperatures we can expect over the course of the weekend will be around 37 degrees on the Sunday, which is around the time of the second F2 race. Aside from that, I think the most intense the F1 will be seeing probably be around 35-36 degrees. But unsurprisingly, there's next to zero precipitation. April in the Middle East. It's not particularly known for being the time of high precipitation. We have seen rain at Bahrain before. I'm pretty sure that there was a wet session for the World Endurance Championship either last season or the season before. But this time of year, what we tend to see at Bahrain is not rainstorms, but sandstorms. Turn the clock back a year and we don't get to the Bahrain Grand Prix, but if you turn back to 13 months, you get the season opener from 2024. It was a Red Bull 1-2 on that day. Sergio Perez, 22.5 seconds behind Max Verstappen. 3rd and 4th were the 2 Ferraris. Sainz beating Leclerc by 14 seconds. But then it was Russell, Norris, Hamilton, Piastri. And the top 10 was rounded out by the 2 Aston Martins, Alonso beating Lance Stroll. Now, we have more recently obviously had testing data, but that isn't wholly accurate to go off of. For example, the fastest time over the course of testing was the Williams of Carlos Sainz. Now, he was nearly a second quicker than Alex Albon's Q2 time in 2024, but we're expecting all the cars to have improved to some degree year on year, especially since we will see some improvements on the cars from pre-season testing. Even if they weren't particularly pushing in testing, we're going to be expecting some kind of improvement, even if they were flat out as well. But that was promising for Williams, who qualified 13th on that day. They might get into Q3 this time around, but if we were to use the testing data purely, we'd go, it's going to be a duel between Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton, which not necessarily. I don't think that that's going to be the fairest way to measure it. I think that testing did illustrate some parts of a picture, but there are some teams that have performed noticeably better than were expected as a result of testing. Sauber is probably the standout of them. Meanwhile, Alpine is going to be hoping that they don't have the same kind of misfortunes as they did 13 months ago when they locked out the back row of the grid in an overweight, underpowered, unreliable car. So in terms of my ones to watch, I would say one of the things I would like to track is the difference between what Carlos Sainz Jr. did in qualifying this time around to what he did in testing. Likewise, seeing the same thing for the Ferrari, because that Ferrari fastest time in the testing sessions was still a 10th up on their Q3 time, their best Q3 time for 2024. I wouldn't be surprised to see McLaren and Red Bull up at the front. When I say Red Bull, predominantly Max Verstappen, though Tsunoda has run well before in Bahrain. As long as he doesn't, try to drive into Verstappen after the end of the race like he supposedly allegedly did to Ricciardo last year. But I would say Max is probably going to be the person to watch the most. He was in great form in Suzuka, and will be looking to try and carry that form, outperforming what the car should be expected to do here in Bahrain. Anyways, those are my thoughts, those are my feelings, and those are my predictions. Let me know yours in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, folks, and until next time, it's bye for now.